everyone. My name is Lisa McCormick. I am the Associate Dean for Public Health Practice here in the UAB School of Public Health. I'm excited to welcome you to today's webinar, Using Nature to Tackle Birmingham's Health Issues. Today's webinar is made possible by the Office of Public Health Practice and the Public Health Student Association. Please take time to visit the Office of Public Health Practice's website. Here you will find postings of past seminar recordings, and as always, check the PHSA calendar for upcoming meetings and events. Now, I would like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Roald Hazelhoff. Roald is currently an assistant professor of political science and the director of the Southern Environmental Center at Birmingham-Southern College. Roald launched the Southern Environmental Center in 1993 and has been successfully maintaining it through external funding sources since that time. Through this initiative, he has built support and awareness for Model Green Initiative on Birmingham-Southern's campus and in the surrounding communities in Birmingham. With the addition of a unique 3-story environmental museum, conference center, and eco art gallery, in 1998, the Southern Environmental Center has become the largest educational facility of its kind in Alabama and is toured by 20,000 visitors annually. I'm really excited to have you here today, Roald, and to learn more about Alabama and environmental stewardship and the Southern Environmental Center. So thank you for joining us today, and I'm going to unshare my slides so that you can share yours.
Well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be able to speak to UAB audience today. I'm going to just kind of walk you through a little bit about how we approach nature and what nature means to me personally, and how the two got connected between political science and my current role as director of the Southern Environmental Center. So we're going to focus on Birmingham, but I want to start with kind of a bigger picture. And it's a little different today. This area over here is now completely blue. That's a joke, but basically what's happened there, obviously, with the hurricane and the flooding, is in part due to the fact that we have coastline in Alabama. And one of the amazing things to me is, if you look at this map of Alabama, is that it has so much. It has an unbelievable river system. It's got mountains. It's got kind of a wiregrass area down by Dothan. It's got the Black Belt area on the Mississippi-Alabama line. And very few states in America have this kind of geographical features and the biodiversity which it makes possible. So by way of starters, since we're on a kind of got rainy day and a lot of water coming our way, this is something I didn't expect when I came to Alabama. It's just the fact that you've got waterfalls. Little River Canyon is up in the Cumberland Range, Fort Payne, Mentone area up towards Chattanooga. It is one of the biological wonders of the United States. It's the deepest canyon east of the Mississippi. It's got these incredible waterfalls. It's just one example of the natural beauty that we have in this state. Keeping on that kind of water theme, the area where the Cahaba River really just comes to life in Bibb County is another example. The wildflowers that grow there, just stunning. And speaking of flowers, the lily itself, the Cahaba lily, this spider lily family, it's only found in a very few river systems in South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama. And if you've never seen it, it's something you really should make a trek down when they come out and bloom typically in late May. You can actually walk in between these. It's very shallow water, and it's one of the most beautiful spots in Alabama. So when I talk about just the natural attributes of Alabama, the Hurricane Creek, this is in the Tuscaloosa area, just kind of giving you a sense of fall color. It's just stunning. I've lived in a lot of places on Earth and in the United States, and little or nothing prepared me for Alabama. Closer to us here up in Blount County, if you've never done it, you should go on a trip of the covered bridges. We don't have a lot left, but this is one. And it's there's about 3 of these bridges in Blount County that are in short driving distance from each other. Good hiking. There's some great swimming holes here that you could spend the day at. So talking about these beautiful places, this obviously is less attractive, right? You wouldn't take your family for a picnic over here. This is several blocks from Birmingham-Southern, and it shows you that the environment and nature is not really prioritized in all areas. This is trash coming from unincorporated parts of Jefferson County. People bring it to Birmingham because they know that at some stage the city will pick it up. And this is just a system gone wrong. When it rains like we're supposed to get this afternoon, it brings lots of environmental challenges. So for example, a lot of that surface litter will end up going into Village Creek. Village Creek goes into the Black Warrior River. And this is what it ends up looking like. And you know, this may not be politically correct, but the saying is that you don't need religion to walk on Alabama rivers when you have this kind of crud covering it. You know, you can. It's a very bad situation for water quality, for wildlife, but also for our health, because much of Birmingham gets its drinking water from Black Warrior River. And then speaking of tires, or I believe here in the South, I'm still learning how to say that, something to that effect, something close to that effect. This is an illegal dump of tires up in Blount County as well. That at the bottom of the picture and on the top of the picture, those gray areas is where those tire fires took place, which is an air quality issue. Then all those other tires, there's a tremendous issue there with water accumulating and it just becoming an incubator for things like West Nile virus. I think people should go to jail for doing this. In Alabama, we have laws against illegal dumping, but we don't really enforce them. And so if and when a lot of these tires are out-of-state tires, and people bring them to Alabama because the enforcement is so slack. So this is an environmental issue, it's a health issue, but I'm going to focus a little bit more on how we set our educational programs in motion. You might have heard that, you know, the common phrase of reuse, reduce, recycle. We focus a lot on reuse and reduce. So when we showcase something, we want to show that you can do this locally, so that you kind of give people ideas on things they can do. My center is built on top of the old indoor swimming pool at Birmingham-Southern. And when they vacated this pool in the late 90s, they let the water out and they closed this part of the gym down because no one could figure out what to do with an old swimming pool. Well, to me, this was a wonderful example of, if you work with local resources, you can reuse a facility like that. So actually what you see there is the beginning of the pool being remodeled, and ultimately it was covered with recycled steel. Birmingham is one of the largest steel recycling centers in the United States. Hundreds of thousands of cars get recycled in Birmingham, and they get made into rebar, they get made into steel sheets. So that's what I used. Approximately 42 cars were used to cover this pool. And that then allowed us to build a nice big center for visitors to come. It's pretty nice on the inside. It has an interactive museum, it has office space, it has conference space, and my office is probably the most unique in Birmingham. It's the old balcony overlooking the pool. It's long enough to where once a year we have a small bowling tournament where we use just the length of my office for that purpose. We do with kids and visitors, we do something called eco art, where we make jewelry out of found objects, etc., stuff that otherwise would have been discarded, and we reuse it to make kind of fun jewelry items, old telephone wires, bottle tops, those kinds of things. But since we started with that interactive museum, we've also added on campus, and our most recent facility addition is what we call the Geodome. It's the old planetarium on campus, the first one built in Alabama. It was, again, an example, it was closed down 12 years ago. The equipment had gotten too old, the astronomy professor had retired, so it sat empty. I took the building and kind of reversed the focus to where it's no longer a focus on the solar system, it's a focus on kind of like just reversing a telescope, or a Google, if you will, just focusing on Alabama. And the stairway going up to the Geodome, it's a large mosaic of Alabama. So the top stairs are the North Alabama mountains, and then you kind of focus all the way down to the Gulf Coast. It's all made with tile from tile boards. If you redo your kitchen, bathroom, you can have those sample boards, people throw them away afterwards. We used over 2,000 pieces to make this giant sculpture piece. This is what the planetarium used to look like. It's a beautiful old building. That Spitz projector, I think there's only a couple of those left in the world, and we've kept it. But what we've done is transformed the star chamber into a state-of-the-art projection chamber, where I use drone and GoPro video clips to make short films about Alabama, very short. They're trailers, 2-minute trailers. And we fly you over the Sipsey wilderness. We'll take you into caves. We will just show you Alabama like you've probably never seen it before. And this is, like I said, a state-of-the-art facility. And when I'm not using it for that purpose, I'm using it to watch World Cup soccer. So it's very important that you have these kind of support facilities for your own well-being, right? Since we're on the topic of health. Now let's go outdoors and let's talk a little bit about what we do to kind of, I'm from the Netherlands, and if you've ever traveled to the Netherlands, there's a miniature city and kind of representation of the Netherlands just outside of The Hague. It's called Madurodam. And you, like a giant, you can walk past canals and churches and airports like Amsterdam Airport, and you can kind of get this bird's eye view, kind of a microcosm view of society in the Netherlands. And when I saw Birmingham-Southern the first time, I thought, you know, this is a great opportunity to use the campus in a similar way. We have, I don't know what the numbers are at UAB, but on our campus, approximately 86% of our students live on campus. Residential, recreational, and workplace settings are all in close proximity to each other. So I can use that to talk about larger environmental issues. Dr. McCormick and I were just talking about COVID's impact on driving. Here in Birmingham, we have some very bad statistics. During rush hour, between 82 and 84% of all vehicles on the road have one occupant. So we don't have an effective ride share system. Uber and Lyft might be making a small dent into that, but mass transit is not something we do very well. So most people drive their cars, they drive it for long distances. COVID has affected that somewhat, but still in this day and age, there are a lot of challenges in terms of trying to get people out of their cars. So if you look at this little map, and I don't know if my little cursor is showing on your screen, but basically you've got residential, and then you've got this little lake, and then you've got recreational intramural fields, and then you've got my Ecoscape system over here. If you can't see that cursor, let me just say that one of the interesting facts of when I first started teaching at Birmingham Southern was that I noticed that about 60 to 70% of all students going to intramural games, working out, throwing frisbees, etc., at the playing fields would drive there. Now that's a contradiction in terms, right? You're going to work out by driving. So changing that became one of my objectives. That lake, I know I won't say that I put the lake there, but I was involved in the planning, made it more attractive to walk from the residential dorms by way of the lake to the intramural fields. Something else also happened because we put some green areas, some nice lawn areas there, and that meant that some of the sorority girls, for example, would in the spring and in the fall, it's quite typical that they would bring out some picnic blankets or some hammocks, etc., and they will kind of just, you know, read a book, whatever, just have some recreational opportunity over there. We found immediately that transformed how male students were viewing this area. So all of a sudden, they would be walking around the lake because that would give them an opportunity to say, oh, hey, Susan, oh, me, oh, I'm part of the lacrosse team, and, you know, I'm on my way to the intramural field. So there's actually a psychology of landscape. If you make landscape more attractive to commute and to use as a pedestrian activity, then you don't have as many issues with people parking and etc., because people are willing to walk further to get there. So the lake is an interesting thing because it's actually a stormwater runoff basin. We collect rainwater on our campus. This cistern is a 24,000 gallon cistern that the rain that hopefully we'll get this afternoon, we're collecting it. We're reusing it around campus. And we're also, and that has an impact. If I have time, maybe I could talk about that later. Maybe it's a different lecture. This is going to become very important in Alabama because the extreme weather that we're seeing down on the coast today, or on the West Coast, NOAA predicts that in the next 50 to 60 years, we're going to see a 70% growth in extreme weather in Alabama. We're going to see more floods. We're going to see more forest fires in Alabama, a lot more. And we're not really used to that. We're going to see more droughts, and we have to start planning for that. California is a good example of a state as beautiful as it is, but in my mind, they need cisterns like this. They need to be able to stock up during periods of rainfall so that during periods of drought, that they're more capable of dealing with things like forest fires. So going back to the lake is a stormwater retention pond. That's really all it is. Our campus is a very hilly campus. We are part of two watersheds, Village Creek and Valley Creek, and this is an ability for us to decrease our footprint in the sense that the rainwater that will come down gets filtered in that kind of rice paddy looking picture in your forefront and then goes into the lake. And it slows down the amount of flood water that would come into Valley Creek and flood areas in downstream in Birmingham, which is a very common problem. So the difference is that most stormwater ponds have a fence around them, no people allowed. You'll see that kind of thing that you'll see next to a big Walmart or so. We've made it into a public amenity. So there's a walking trail all the way around. We want you to go there. And that's a different way of how using nature then to affect behavior and to improve quality of life, health. So speaking now, as during a period of COVID, we actually, and again, I don't know if my cursor shows, but on the left side where you see some of the lights on, that's an amphitheater. And so we do outdoor classes there, we do concerts out there, and you've got a facility now that is an asset and a connection on campus. UAB is starting to get this and do some really good projects on your own campus. Bambi Ingram, your sustainability director, interim director, is doing some great stuff. I think UAB gets it, that a pedestrian-based campus is extremely important and contributes to health. So in this case, this lake then pond also connects to our Ecoscape system, and the Ecoscape system is over time we built 15 of these. They are vacant lots that are transformed into green space, outdoor classrooms. And so I'll give you an example of what it used to look like. It was on the edge of our campus. At one time, our campus leased out some property to a auto body shop. And it's pretty much a tradition in Alabama that when you can't drive a car anymore, you park it front yard, backyard, on blocks, right? You'll see that in a lot of areas. And this is what I found. And so we transformed this area into something very inviting, low cost. These are all bricks from old dorms on campus that were demolished at the time, and then they would just have an area where they stored it and just let grass grow over it. So I with the help of local artists, we transformed this into our first Ecoscape. It's divided into areas, zones, like a miniature Alabama. At the top part, there's a quarter-mile trail. It's the Appalachian Trail. It becomes a geography classroom so that we can kind of teach about what Alabama has to offer. But it's also an important green space that students, faculty, staff, visitors can go to decompress. Studies show that within 2 minutes of being in a green space like this, blood sugar levels go down, blood pressure levels go down. And that's something which is one of our main health issues in Alabama. Lots of plants, lots of opportunities to collect seeds. These are butterfly bushes at the top part, black-eyed Susans. Lovely, lovely plants that we have in Alabama. And our gardens are designed to not be irrigated. So these beautiful plants are growing in areas where we don't even water. We just make sure that we design it in a way that they can survive during tough times. Lots of visuals. Our logo is a sunflower. This is the mosaic. I've got a cat that's trying very hard to get on screen here. So hopefully I can complete this presentation without me chasing after the cat. But this is a classroom pavilion that is made out of broken, well, it's a campus, right? So the centerpiece, the sunflower seeds are made out of broken beer bottles, courtesy of Fraternity Row. Some of the plates that you see, those are plates and saucers from Birmingham restaurants where they might have had a chip on it, they couldn't use it anymore, so we reused it. And it's just an example of how you can make beautiful art out of basic junk. The health part is getting kids over there. Children nowadays, a recent study showed that 12-year-old children spend less time in a whole week outdoors than they do in front of a screen in one day. So especially during COVID, I think it's a very important factor to get this nature deficit addressed and get them out and get them to reconnect with nature. So that's what we do. That's the flower power hour that we have here, where they all get to wear some of the vines flowers that we have. They do some weird stuff. I mean, one of the rules that we have is you're going to get kids more interested if you gross them out. Where here we're making kids eat figs. Few of any of these kids have ever eaten figs, as you can see by the looks of horror and curiosity at the same time. We have our landscapes are edible landscapes. And so we want to reconnect with nature in a way that they actually don't just consider it something that you see in a store, in a box. The facility that we also manage that some of you might know, and if not, you're missing out. It's one of the most beautiful places in Jefferson County, and that is Turkey Creek Nature Preserve. It's a 466 acre piece of state land in Pinson that we manage for the state of Alabama, because the state doesn't really have a lot of resources, or sometimes, I think, interest in managing its own natural wonders. So we took it over. It's open to the public. We do programs with UAB. We do a lot of classes out there, both for kids, which it's kind of precious to see. These kids are going to do some water ecology, freshwater ecology, and they're stoked, as you can see. I mean, they are ready. But we also do programs for different age groups, families, etc., on the natural history of that area. And then a lot of programs for college kids, on high school and college kids, on the biodiversity. Here, these students are seining for some of the unique attributes of Turkey Creek. First of all, the water is some of the cleanest water in Jefferson County. There's untold amount of natural springs, at least 20, that feed Turkey Creek. So the water is, very few rivers or creeks in Alabama can you see the creek bottom, but it's crystal clear. That means that there's certain types of fish that depend on water quality that can survive in these waters. An example being the watercress and vermilion darters. The male vermilion darter at the top is very colorful in order to attract the female, and at the bottom. And what makes Turkey Creek amazing to me is that this is the only place on Earth where this fish is found. It's not very big, just 2 inches, so it's a tiny fish, but it can only survive in the cleanest of water, and that's what we have in our backyard. Most people don't know that we have these kinds of attributes. And so Turkey Creek is a place that is a home to unique species. It's not only that, 8 of the 14 known species of bats found in Alabama are found at Turkey Creek. And we work with Fish and Wildlife and with college biology faculty to actually tag those bats. We capture them in large nets, and then what we've actually found is that most of these bats come to Turkey Creek from Roebuck Springs and fly 15 miles all the way to Turkey Creek because the biodiversity is there for them to survive. So making that into an educational program, that's something that at the very get-go we've tried to not leave in a kind of a box of academic research, but to bring it to the people. And how do you take a program like the presence of watercress, which is actually found in other fish that we have at Turkey Creek, and vermilion darter, and how do you bring that to schools? How do you want to protect that little fish, so you don't want 12,000 school children, jumping around in the water chasing after that fish. You do want them in the water, but you also want to get them involved through their schools. And so what you see here is just, we started a program to paint kites, to make kites, kind of a Chinese fish kite design, and start a competition between schools to see who could paint the coolest darters. So that's part of a darter festival that we do to kind of get the education out about this program. So that's in essence just the beginning of my going back to the beginning. My love for Alabama, and the reason I'm still here after after 30 plus years, is that this is a state with so many natural wonders, so many amazing things that you can go to and visit. From the dismal canyons on the Mississippi Alabama border, to Little River Canyon, to the Black Belt, which I find fascinating, the chalk formations of the Tom Bigby and Alabama River. Much of Alabama used to be underwater, at least 2/3 of it, and so it's quite common to find giant shark teeth close to Tuscaloosa, because that's how far the waters would come 20 million years ago. And that's just very few states have that kind of geological biodiversity. So that's the good news. The bad news is that, very few people know about these wonders, treat them with the kind of necessity or respect that I think they deserve. And Alabama has a lot of environmental issues because we have not really thought about what we're doing. When you litter, you're creating, if you throw a cigarette butt out here in Birmingham and it rains, it's going to flow through the river system down to the Mobile Basin. If you look down in the Mobile Basin, just the picture I showed you, the Black Warrior River, that's just a small percentage of the problems that they have down in the Tensor Delta and the Mobile Bay from crud coming from us. Sediment from poor building practices, pollution coming from our cars. Not only do we use cars too much, but a lot of our cars are in bad shape, and they leak oil, they leak heavy metals, and that all goes into our water system, on which we rely on for drinking water. So we have lots of issues. Our approach has been that you need to reverse that. If you use nature as a natural medication, you can change. You become a lot healthier. People now come to Turkey Creek from all over northern Jefferson County. They don't really have walking parks over there. They can come and walk around. We have mountain bike trails at Turkey Creek. We have all kinds of passive recreation opportunities that help with people's health. In Birmingham itself, most of our schools don't really have campuses that allow them to use their playgrounds in a way that contribute to the health of those students. We want to change that. We're starting a program in early 2021 to build the ecoscape that you saw in these earlier slides, to build at least 11 miniature ecoscapes at Birmingham City Schools as a kind of a way to create outdoor classrooms with the same kind of theme. We very much always look forward to opportunities to work with entities like the School of Public Health. We're good educators. We're not public health experts. And so our programs can only get stronger through collaboration. The worst thing we can do is sit in a little cubicle and just say, well, we've got this really cool center and that's what we do, and we'll let somebody else do the other parts of it. No, the way we make Alabama healthier is by seeking out partnerships. And so that's in essence what we do. And if we can mine some of the knowledge that you have as students, as faculty, as staff, on ways that we can strengthen our programs, then then Alabama as a whole will get out of some of those problem categories of, having some of the highest levels of obesity in the United States, both and some of the fastest growing rates among young people. Depression, dealing with depression, especially now with COVID. I mean, I get depressed if I look at a screen for 4 hours. So, the average kid looks at that nearly double that amount of time. And so if we lose connection with community because we're just isolated like that, that's not good. So we have found, after doing a lot of trial research, we've reopened our gardens and Turkey Creek for groups to come through, albeit much smaller groups, socially distanced, all these kinds of things that we have to do until we really overcome COVID. But I think it's extremely important that part of the solution to COVID is letting people go outdoors, letting kids go outdoors, and connecting with nature in such a way that we utilize the natural RX value of nature. I think one of the sayings that really struck me early on was one of the top folks at the CDC who did a presentation on the importance of nature, and it was entitled "Hug a Tree and Call Me in the Morning." We know that nature can help make us healthier, make us happier, give us more of a sense of peace and serenity. What I look for is ways that we can build on each other's strengths to really create model programs. So I'll leave it at that. Dr. McCormick, you may have some questions that have come in, or you may have some ways that that you can kind of update me on programs that you're already doing. But thank you for this opportunity to kind of give a quick overview.
No, we're really happy that you were able to join us today. And we have had several questions to come in. I think one of them, you had your map of Alabama up there. Someone wants to know, what is your absolute favorite region of Alabama to visit?
I'm a mountain person. Most people would say the beach, but for me, it's that area around Mentone, just Little River Canyon, and then just surprised an area that I didn't really know that much about, but the Scottsboro area, the Tennessee River Valley area over there. There's some stunning places. Gorham's Bluff, it's a kind of a design community up there, but going up to Florence, if you take the Mississippi line as your guide and go up that way, you'll pass by the Dismals. The Dismals is a place that it's a canyon that has a tiny little bug. It's a luminescent bug, and in June and July, it's like something out of a Disney movie. The whole canyon walls light up in the evening, and it was used as a spiritual retreat by Native Americans for centuries. It's got waterfalls. It's stunning.
So we've had several questions come in around maybe opportunities that college students can volunteer, either with your center or with some of the programs you were describing at Turkey Creek. Mm-hmm. Are there opportunities for students?
Yes, absolutely. I just recently had some folks from AMSTI, the Math and Science Initiative for K through 12 schools, contact us and say, we would love to get more information out to our science teachers on ways that they can make the Alabama course of study and science more interesting, more relevant to their lives. I think this may not score me points with the mayor, but I think the Mayor Woodfin's initiative to the Promise initiative to get high school seniors into colleges like UAB on a science track. I think that's very important. My personal feeling is that it's going to have a hard time succeeding because we're not working coherently with elementary and middle school kids to get them interested in science. So helping look at ways that we can strengthen the like a health focus for Alabama science teachers on local issues, and helping to write a curriculum or designing exhibits. We could use volunteers all the time. Maintaining the ecoscapes themselves, it requires maintenance, and it's we always need help. Turkey Creek, it's 466 acres. A lot of times the trails will need some maintenance. After a storm, there'll be debris that needs cleaned up. So yes, volunteer groups are always welcome, and it'd be a great way for UAB and Birmingham-Southern to collaborate.
So another question came from a faculty member. Can non-BSc faculty, staff, and students currently visit the campus there in your environmental center?
Yes, not the environmental center per se. We are doing only group tours there for 10 groups of 10. So if you can get a group together, then we can do that. But the gardens are always open. So the Ecoscape gardens are open during daylight hours. You will get a temperature test when you go on campus. I mean, that's pretty standard, now. But they are open to the general public.
And then someone wanted to know what percentage of materials at the Southern Environmental Center are recycled?
Oh, that's a good question, because a lot of what we have there has been reused, right? So recycled, well, the floor, that's 100% recycled content. But like, for example, the bathrooms, the urinals, this is more detailed than probably anybody needed to know, but we and Sanford may not know this, but we borrowed them from Sanford. So they were sitting there in storage, and so we just hijacked them, and that's creative reuse as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. So you mentioned, or you described some of the built environment changes or improvements that y'all had on Birmingham Southern campus, everything from the stormwater retention pond and making it a public amenity or a destination in itself. What are some of the ways that we can work, or that you have worked to improve landscape in communities outside of Birmingham Southern? What are some of the things that we can think about in public health as we, are examining communities and trying to improve health outcomes in a community when it comes to landscape and built environment?
Yeah, I think to the extent, and this may be a future presentation that you might look for, but the Freshwater Land Trust's Red Rock Trail system is a good example of how landscape can be transformed. So they have been working on, I mean, everybody knows Railroad Park, but from Railroad Park, the Vulcan Trail that is now connecting to Avondale. And then from Avondale, it's looking to connect to Ruffner Mountain. And then conversely, the efforts to connect Lakeshore and Shades Creek Greenway to Red Mountain Park. That is a part of a vision that was first promoted by the Olmsted brothers, the sons of Frederick Law Olmsted, the granddaddy of our national park system, that they were commissioned to come to Birmingham to deal with health issues that we had in the formation of this city, right? As Birmingham was built up as an industrial center, all kinds of industrial byproducts came with it that were very unhealthy. We had cholera, we had all kinds of health issues because of contamination of our watersheds, using it as industrial and sewage for purposes, and so people were leaving Birmingham. Professional, middle class folks that were associated with the iron and then steel industry were leaving Birmingham, and the city elders commissioned the Olmsted brothers to say, okay, how can we improve quality of life? So they designed places like Forest Park. They designed areas like Highland, the whole connection of parks along Highland Avenue. They designed Bush Boulevard in Ensley, which is like a miniature Highland Boulevard. And they proposed for Birmingham a series of greenways following the ridges and valleys of Birmingham that would create a larger greenway system connecting all communities. Birmingham decided that was too expensive. Now, at 60 times the cost, we are revisiting that dream, because that's how you ultimately get quality of life, is if you connect. If you're living in Leeds, and that you can go by bike to Birmingham as opposed to always having to rely on a car, that's how you make a sustainable community in the long term. That's probably a long-winded answer, but.
Very good. So you mentioned elected officials earlier, and yep. So someone has a question about, how we look at and I'm trying to combine a couple of different questions here at one time, but how we work with elected officials to, implement some of these changes in our communities, the importance of voting, and, who are the elected officials that we should be looking for to kind of lead some of these changes. So any thoughts on that?
Sure. One of the city council members that has come out to several of our Ecoscape, which is what we call our gardens, cleanup days, has been Crystal Smitherman. She's part of a new order, just like the mayor is part of a new order. But Crystal is very passionate about parks and about recreational improvements. And she's got some neighborhoods that are pretty rough neighborhoods, where at first sense you think, well, it's going to be hard to implement a greenway system over there. She doesn't see it that way. So that's one example of someone that I admire for coming in and putting down that shoulder right away, because that's what it takes. I think for the most part, we have a city council system. Daryl O'Quinn, Valerie Abbott, some of the others that are amenable to these things. They see that quality of life clearly should have a green element to it. It should have, and we should work with nature. And then I see some politicians, like for example, out of Pinson, who initially, just were a little averse to saying, what's this guy trying to do out here, but if you don't make the argument that you're actually saving thousands of trees and that you're providing Northern Jefferson County with Turkey Creek, you're providing them with the lungs for Northern Jefferson County, they're cleaning the air, they're doing so many things like that. But instead you make the argument that Turkey Creek, last year, before COVID started, had 134,000 visitors from as far away as Chile, Germany, Sweden. And we were able to show, by capturing some kind of entry place questionnaires, just where people were coming from, that there's actually an economic impact that you can argue that green space provides, right? Before Railroad Park, what did it look like over there, right? It wasn't a place that you brought visitors. It was pretty forlorn, that whole area over there. And now, it's a few years ago, Railroad Park was voted the #1 city park in the United States, right? Now that's kind of high end. My gardens are a little more low end in terms of cost, in terms of maintenance, etc. But that's the argument, depending on which political entity you're talking to. But there's certainly an economic aspect to this, right? Why do people go to Chattanooga? Because it's a great place to go biking and walking, and they've connected. Well, I remember Chattanooga in the 1980s. It wasn't a place that you spent any time, right? So that would be hopefully that's an answer.
Yes, I think so. So, one student wants to know, do you think education and curriculum is kind of like, should be the #1 focus for Birmingham right now to educate those younger children as they're coming up? Or is there something more the city needs to be doing as far as making things more eco-friendly?
Well, I think education works when you show things that people can relate to. So for example, our programs, when we're talking about water quality and some of the future issues for it, like I mentioned, that NOAA predicts that we're going to see a 70% increase in flooding, right? Well, much of that flooding that we currently see in Birmingham is along Village Creek, by the airport, Tallapoosa, down in Ensley, places like that. And if you actually make education focus on local watersheds, as opposed to the Chesapeake Bay, as opposed to focusing on Antarctica. Since we don't teach geography in our schools coherently anymore, people don't really know their backyards. So one of the programs, the program that we're hoping to start with Birmingham City Schools, and that we'd love UAB to be a partner in, is saying, okay, let's make STEM locally applicable. Let's show these kids where they live in the Village Creek watershed and where their school is. And if we do get flooding, let's use the new projection models that show where grandma's house is going to be next time you have a 10-inch or a 20-inch storm come through, right? And that's local, that's down the street, they can relate to it. And then let's get them involved in saying, look, there are some plans to change this. Get the kids to make the petition to city council for a greenway or for tree planting along certain areas. That's how you affect it.
So just one more question. So what are your plans? What are the center's plans to get people to go outside after this COVID-19 situation hopefully calms down or alleviates? Do you think people are going to appreciate the environment more after all of this?
Yeah, I think people do appreciate the environment when they're out in it. My challenge is that, as you and I were talking about earlier, if we get into a post-COVID situation and everybody just gets on airplanes, gets in cars, crank up the AC. One of the biggest challenges that I see here in Birmingham, I see every day, and I'll end with that. Years ago, I worked with a group on trying to improve air quality in Birmingham during the ozone season, and so in the summer months. And there's a big issue when we have cars idling, right? In the Netherlands, if you're at a stop, a red light, you better turn your engine off if you're there for more than a minute, or you can get a ticket for leaving your engine on, right? Here, One of the things I tried to do is to approach McDonald's, because they had over 50, franchise stores here in the Birmingham area. And I went to the CEO and I said, Max, during ozone red alert days, would you partner with us by closing your drive-throughs and offering people who come inside to order and turn their engines off, give them an ice cream or do something, And he looked at me and he goes, Hazelhoff, he says, absolutely not. Do you realize that 80% of my traffic is drive-through traffic? So we are so wedded to the car that we can't even get out of it to eat. And then we leave our engines on in that process, right? So we've got lots of challenges, but that's where a partnership between our two entities, that's where you get strength in numbers, when you really show the public what the impact is of their actions.
Right. Well, I think it just shows some of the challenges that we have in general in public health about getting people out and more physically active. And you mentioned some of the kind of downstream effects of that, mental health outcomes, physical health outcomes. So I think you're right, it's all very connected. And it's something I think in public health we need to pay more attention to when we're working in community. So we really appreciate having you here today and taking the time to come talk to us. And we hope that maybe some of us can get over to your Southern Environmental Center soon.
Please do, and feel free to email, or just if a group wants to come, faculty, students, as long as it's 10, we can handle it.
Okay.
Okay.
So much. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.